Hong Kong reacted with a mix of criticism and support after President Trump announced he will end the special treatment for the financial hub. A Hong Kong businessman appealing to President Trump to protect Hong Kong, like West Berlin, and save Hong Kong's young protesters, whom he called the seeds of the new China. China's northeastern Jilin province is on lockdown, but many residents are left in the dark. One local tells us what it's like. The Chinese regime is taking a harsher stance towards Taiwan. Now, the idea of armed reunification with Taiwan is starting to reappear on CCTV. And Canada is working with the Chinese military to develop a CCP virus vaccine. But as its development begins human trials, one doctor is concerned for the safety of Canadian test subjects. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The northeastern Chinese city of Jilin has been under lockdown for 2 weeks. One resident called Miss Yang told us the situation there is becoming very serious. All restaurants are closed. Very few supermarkets are open. Some pharmacies are closed too. Anyone with a fever has to go to the hospital to get treatment. She says most people just stay at home now. They're very scared and life is hard.
Right now, the economy here is completely paralyzed, 90% of it. Everything is shut down, including most factories and businesses. Only state-owned factories are still open, but their production is cut in half.
She said many people are using up their savings and are not getting help from the authorities.
A lot of people lost their jobs and are running out of money. They're spending their savings like I am. Some people work from home, but not full-time. They're on a reduced salary, around $140 a month. No government subsidies, no free food from authorities. It's an impossible situation.
She said authorities aren't reporting the true situation.
They cleared out an entire hospital to make room for virus patients. Some other hospitals aren't accepting new patients at all. And there are lots of hotels designated for quarantine. Big buses are being used to bring people to quarantine centers. Authorities don't report the reality. If they did, the residents would panic.
As tensions in Hong Kong grow, China's attitude towards Taiwan is hardening. The Chinese Communist regime claims Taiwan is a province of China. But Taiwan as a democratic system never accepted that. Now, the idea of armed reunification with Taiwan is starting to reappear in Communist Party propaganda. On May 29th, China Central Television, or CCTV, broadcasted a documentary on the 1958 Taiwan Strait crisis. In the 1958 Taiwan Strait conflict, China shelled 2 islands of Taiwan. Taiwan fired back, and the fighting didn't stop until January 1st, 1979, when diplomatic relations between China and the U.S. were officially established. Taiwan and China have not been in military conflict since then. The CCTV trailer says this attack from 60 years ago, quote, has left us a valuable historical reference for the quick resolution of the Taiwan issue and the completion of national reunification. During the China's-U.S. trade war, CCTV broadcast the movie Anti-U.S. and Pro-North Korea to signal its attitude. The 1958 Taiwan Strait crisis was purposely broadcast at this specific time to highlight the idea of armed reunification. President Trump said on Friday the U.S. will sever ties with the World Health Organization. The U.S. has been part of the UN agency since 1948. Trump accused the agency of becoming a puppet of China over its handling of the virus pandemic. He said Chinese officials ignored their reporting obligations to the WHO about the virus and pressured the agency to mislead the world. He added China has total control over the World Health Organization despite only paying $40 million per year compared to the U.S.'s $450 million. Trump last month halted funding for the 194-member organization. Then, in a May 18th letter, gave the WHO 30 days to commit to reforms. It is not clear when the decision will come into effect. Under the 1949 agreement, the joint resolution by Congress on the U.S. membership of the WHO says a member country reserve its right to withdraw from the organization on a 1-year notice. The WHO did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Trump's announcement. The European Union is urging the U.S. to reconsider severing ties with the WHO. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Josep Borrell, the EU's top diplomat, said in a statement, "In the face of this global threat, now is the time for enhanced cooperation and common solutions. Actions that weaken international results must be avoided." They added, "In this context, we urge the U.S. to reconsider its announced decision." The EU has led calls for a review of the international response to the coronavirus pandemic, including the UN agency's performance. President Trump announced he will move to end Hong Kong's special trade status with the U.S. Here's how American businesses in Hong Kong and residents there are reacting.
The American Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong says President Trump's move to revoke Hong Kong's trade status is a blow to the city, though not entirely unexpected.
It's a difficult moment for all of us.
President Trump said this Friday his administration will begin the process of revoking Hong Kong's special trade status. The move comes after China passed a national security law that could put the city's freedom in jeopardy.
China has replaced its promised formula of one country, two systems with one country, one system. Therefore, I am directing my administration to begin the process of eliminating policy exemptions that give Hong Kong different and special treatment.
But the head of the American Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong says not all businesses will rush to exit the city.
We need a lot more details on how this special status is going to unravel. It's not just like switching off a light switch. There are so many aspects of the U.S.-Hong Kong relationship that are special. We really have to see how it will work for understanding the impact to business.
One Hong Konger said he's not surprised about Trump's decision.
I know that he's going to do something about it for the past few days. I know, and we know that. But we have to go on.
Hong Kong activist Joshua Wong said Chinese leader Xi Jinping must bear the largest responsibility for the sanctions on Hong Kong.
Without the legislation of the national security law, I don't believe the world or the global community need to spend time to, when they need to deal with the pandemic, at the same time they will still put effort to impose any kind of sanction mechanism.
In Hong Kong, pro-Beijing politicians have criticized the U.S. for interfering with what they call China's domestic affairs, while some pro-democracy activists cheered the U.S. decision. They say it will punish Beijing for imposing legislation that threatens Hong Kong's liberty. Chinese officials were unusually quiet after the U.S. declaration. Beijing did not make an official announcement in the 24 hours following Trump's speech.
In a heartfelt video letter to President Trump, Hong Kong entrepreneur Robert Yuan is calling on Trump to grant visas for Hong Kong's young people. This as Chinese authorities push through a new law that many say will end Hong Kong's freedom.
Robert Yuan has several companies in both Hong Kong and the U.S. He's the father of two Hong Kong politicians. He lived in the U.S. and China each for over 20 years and is known for his financial analysis. In a video, he appealed to President Trump to save the young people of Hong Kong.
We all know the end of Hong Kong is near. These young kids are making a final stand, as in Dunkirk. They need your help.
China's new law would criminalize activities deemed as threats by Beijing. Critics say Beijing aims to retaliate against Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters who've been on the streets over the past year. More than 9,000 protesters have been arrested. Amnesty International says protesters are facing brutal beatings and torture in police detention. Yuan says it's unfortunate only these thousands of young people out of 1.4 billion Chinese have the courage to stand up and sacrifice for the universal values of the free world.
I quote, "Never in history has so much been done for so many by so few." Let me repeat. Never in history has so much been done for so many by so few. If your national resources allow, please protect Hong Kong as West Berlin. These kids are the seeds of a new China. They will be the true friends of your grandchildren.
In an interview with NTD's Hong Kong bureau, Yuan said the city might face a tough economic year ahead.
So there are $2-3 trillion of money in Hong Kong will be on its way back to the United States. And this will affect the Hong Kong stock market and the Hong Kong dollars, and maybe even the RMB in Hong Kong. This will impact in a very, very powerful manner. And I believe all the Hong Kong people and the corrupted officials from China, they will be doing the same to liquidate all their assets, change into US dollars, and depart from Hong Kong.
Despite the impact on Hong Kong's economy, Yuan appealed to the U.S. to withdraw its investments in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a major gateway for China to attract foreign investment.
Hong Kong has become the largest money laundering center and the capital of the corrupted funds stolen by the corrupted Chinese officials. The CCP are staging a world-class deception to suck up trillions of US dollars, while dress Hong Kong up as an autonomous and legitimate city. Please recall your investment bankers from Hong Kong. Your US capital will be put into better use at home than to grow cancers in China and then spread to the rest of the world through the One Belt, One Road initiative. You should sanction all these communist entities from getting any more US capital.
Yuan said he believes the world loves Hong Kong and will help the city rise again.
To help Hong Kong to return to its former vibrance and glory. And we are getting old. So the future belongs to the young people. Thank you.
Reporting by Sarah Liang, NTD News.
An update on the global race to develop a vaccine for the CCP virus. A Canadian doctor is raising concerns over a vaccine candidate that was developed in partnership with the Chinese military. That's as it enters phase 2 of human trials.
Canada's National Research Council has announced a collaboration initiative with Chinese company CanSino Biologics. They're working on clinical development of a possible new vaccine developed in partnership with the Chinese regime's military. Health Canada, the country's public health department, has approved the first human clinical trials. They're set to run at the Canadian Centre for Vaccinology at Dalhousie University. Dr. Kulvinder Gill is a Toronto-based medical doctor and president of grassroots nonprofit Concerned Ontario Doctors. She says she's worried about Canadians becoming test subjects of a vaccine developed in China.
We are the only country in the entire world that has chosen to partner with the Communist Chinese military, which is gravely concerning and it's frankly dangerous.
Dr. Gill's main concern are speed and lack of transparency. While normal vaccine development spans 10 to 15 years, CanSino moved into phase 2 human trials within a matter of weeks, without publishing any data from the first phase of trials. In recent years, China has been hit with several major vaccine scandals, one as recent as 2018, when hundreds of thousands of children were injected with faulty vaccines.
Their vaccine industry is tarnished. A reputation is now, they're trying to revive that by co-opting Canada's global reputation. And we can't allow that to happen because there's been so much devastation globally.
The concerns come after the Chinese regime hid information about human-to-human transmission of the CCP virus for at least several days and punished whistleblowers who tried to sound the alarm. Canadian Member of Parliament James Bazan signed an open letter calling for more accountability from the Chinese Communist regime over its handling of the virus.
Government of China needs to be open with the world and transparent about how this all came to be. It's the only way we're going to understand how we control the virus going forward. It's the only way that we're going to get to the bottom of developing a virus and a cure.
Dr. Gill says even if the vaccine was developed, the amount of manufacturing required could take 2 to 4 years. She also noted that previous virus outbreaks, like SARS and MERS, dissipated on their own without vaccine intervention. She adds that the same could happen with the CCP virus. NTD News, Toronto.
It looks like the second time was the charm for NASA and SpaceX. The two aerospace companies have successfully launched a pair of astronauts into orbit this afternoon. They'll reach the International Space Station tomorrow morning.
Ignition.
SpaceX launched 2 of NASA's astronauts into Earth's lower orbit on Saturday at 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time. The launch, called Demonstration Mission 2, launched the Dragon crew with SpaceX's rocket Falcon 9. It's the first exclusively American space mission since 2011, 9 years ago. NASA's administrator, Jim Bridenstine, gave credit to his predecessor, along with President Trump, who said he is supporting NASA despite potential risks.
We have not had that kind of leadership for space in a very, very long time, and we're so grateful for it.
President Trump, who is now the 3rd sitting president to watch a launch from the Kennedy Space Center, commended NASA.
Those of us who saw the spectacular and unforgettable liftoff this afternoon watched more than an act of history. We watched an act of heroism.
Astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are now riding on the Dragon 2 spacecraft to the International Space Station. Their trip will take 19 hours. Their scheduled arrival at the ISS is at 10:27 a.m. Sunday.
While most businesses across the U.S. remain shuttered amid the virus outbreak, one oyster farm in Northern California has kept busy.
Like many U.S. businesses, the Hog Island oyster farm in North California was devastated by the CCP virus. It's one of the largest oyster producers in the Tamales Bay, but when the lockdown came, it was forced to furlough 90% of its 300 workers.
Never experienced anything like this, where we're just full-on operations on all levels and then having to close all the doors while we try to figure out how to deal with that kind of reaction. The effect on the business has been fairly devastating.
The oyster farm lost 2/3 of its business, but the owner had to keep a crew working to maintain the oyster crop. Otherwise, the quality of the crop would have been affected even after the lockdown was lifted.
If we can't get out there to do this work, one, we're going to lose some of them will die because they've been too crowded. They'll be misshapen.
With restaurants shut down for dining, Hog Island was forced to adapt. Their brand new Larkspur location, which opened in March, began with pickup and to-go orders. The company previously only shipped during holidays, but now it does it every week.
I'm extremely confident that we're going to come back strong and come back at a level that's going to be different. That ingenuity, that creativity, that enthusiasm, that passion is still there.
Sawyer hopes they'll be able to bring their staff back again as California reopens.
How did societies cope with plagues in the past, and how do they compare with the virus we're facing now? We talked to a professor of medieval history to find out.
One of the most notable plagues in history is the Black Death, which hit Europe in the 14th century. The Middle Ages lacked much of today's medical knowledge and quick communication. So how did people cope back then? Some examples are found in 14th century literature, most notably Giovanni Boccaccio's masterpiece, titled The Decameron.
And these are recorded quite widely. One is to just abandon everything and to turn yourself over to all sorts of sexual depravity. There's all sorts of discussions of merrymaking, of singing, of heavy drinking. But then the other hand is to turn towards absolute religious austerity, right?
No matter which path people chose, society carried on. But there's no doubt that the widespread destruction shook up normal life. And much like today, people were left searching for answers.
One of the main similarities is how we look to experts for some sort of solace, some sort of comfort. We rely now and in the past on doctors, physicians, medical treaties, scientists, even philosophers. We look for help from authorities, particularly from governments or those in positions of power.
Assistant Professor of Medieval Studies, Kristen Rennie, says it was common back then to look to priests for guidance. But he explains that wasn't always reliable either. That's because there are accounts of priests abandoning their duties in times of turmoil. Compare that with today.
Rely on the science. Every government's telling us to rely on the science, but it's worth pointing out that there's not just one science, right? There's not one singular scientific view, just like there is not one singular historical view of what happens or perspective of what's going on. But that authority is being questioned, and in many places it's being undermined, right? So again, I say there are cracks in society being exposed.
But if looking to authorities for answers wasn't always a dependable option, how did people find the strength to carry on? Rennie says this part is what's missing from historical accounts and stories of past plagues.
You know, we don't have too many glimpses into the past of the kindness of others, the kindness of neighbors helping each other, the power of resiliency. That fundamental belief, I think, is no doubt. I mean, I can't confirm I can't back it up with solid evidence, but no doubt that, you know, universal religious belief inspired people to go on.
In the midst of today's pandemic, the question remains, how will each person internally cope to get past this? And how will it change our society? Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
People are hitting the beach as virus restrictions start to ease and summer begins. But access might be limited, and public health officials still urge caution and social distancing.
Around the world, people have begun flocking back to beaches as summer arrives to the Northern Hemisphere.
A bit of sunbathing, a bit of vitamin D, that's what the immune system needs.
But this year is anything but traditional. While rules vary across the world, access to beaches might be limited, and public health officials still urge caution, including continued physical distancing. Italy's beaches are reopening, but they're getting a makeover.
We were forced to do a lot of things in order to reopen. We sanitized beach cabins, the restaurant, the warehouses, and the kiosk here on the beach.
Umbrellas will be far apart. Before, there were areas for tennis and volleyball and a beach club for party animals to dance until dawn. None of that will be there this year.
Many of our customers were sport lovers, but we had to remove the sports area. We removed all the beach tennis and beach volley courts. We are setting rows of umbrellas. We had to remove one beach umbrella out of 2, and we did the same for the restaurant. We had to remove 1 table out of 2, and in this case, everything has halved.
Over in the US, the famed California beaches like Santa Monica and Malibu are also not the same. No lounging around on the sand. Use of the beach is limited to swimming, surfing and biking. In some places, picnicking and sunbathing may be prohibited. Orange County has banned the building of sandcastles. Vendors are not allowed, so bring everything you need. Stay at least 6 feet from others who are not members of your household, and wear a mask while out of the water if there are other people nearby.
Here at China in Focus, we dedicate ourselves to bringing you truthful, unbiased reporting. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the latest updates, and see you next time.